I was having this thought during Matt Eberflus's press conference today, and I want to ask you this first because you have been probably most critical of Flus and his pressers. Do you think he's getting better at these press conferences?
It's so I was just looking at the rundown, which I rarely do, and and I saw that on there, and now that and I was like, I had the exact thought, and now you're bringing it up. At the start of his presser today, we got the best Flus, easy going Flus, honest Flus. Like I honestly thought to myself, not to be slightly egotistical here. I'm like, has he been listening to the CHGO Bears podcast and taking the feedback of just we need an honest, straight up, right at it Flus? Like he made a joke about the fight, which was he was like, oh yeah, you saw that? You're like, I think Herb Howard called it like a skirmish or something. He's like,
a dust up,
and and then he upgraded it.
He updated it to he called it a fight,
right? Oh. And then it was like, it's what's gonna happen. No big deal. Like I was loving the Flus for the first half of his Flusness today, and then the second half of Flus, he resorted back to standard Flus. But he had a great start. He did.
I felt like that was one of his better press conferences. I would rate today's press conferences as a whole probably some of the better ones.
So let's break this down. I actually do think this is a real thing. I'm being serious now. Now. With the one very important caveat, it is June. There is no adversity. There are no losses. They have had a phenomenal offseason. Everything has fallen into place in a way that if you listen to Ryan Poles on the Adam Schefter podcast, which we're going to bring up at the end of the show, they really do feel fortunate in how the stuff has fallen into place. So everybody's feeling really good. I get that. But this is also part of an actual physical makeover we've seen with this coach this offseason. And I think that it's carrying over to the press conferences. And by the way, the Bears have had a PR change, which I think matters in this conversation too. So you have Flus go. Here's his opening statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing because it's too long, which points for that. Like he's bringing things to the table. Opens with this little nugget. Well, first of all, he goes with the weather comment. So maybe 1 point down for the weather to start. But then he brings up on his own how he's brought the rookies over to his house with some other guys. This has been a thing he's done all offseason. He had the first year and second year players over. Food truck and everything. They're playing games. They're having fun. Then he had the third and fourth year players over. And then all the vets that are at least 5 and up. And he has a nice little joke about, you can tell talent difference for like games like golf and stuff from the guys who've been around longer. But that's a little nugget he's throwing out on his own to give to the media. I thought it was interesting. Then I thought it was interesting that he has no problem going into Caleb's interception. No one had to ask it. Yep, Caleb threw a pick today, broke it all down. He said Caleb double hitched on it, threw it back over the middle. Something he's got to learn. Get it out of your system now. So, I've seen coaches bristle at the idea of somebody asking about an interception in practice in June, and he's offering off the top of his head because he knows he's going to get asked about it. Why not just knock it out right away? And then the other part of this too, that's not necessarily an opening statement, but has come up in multiple press conferences now, including today. He is not afraid of acknowledging that Caleb Williams should be really, really good. I mean, he was asked a question by Pat today about the quarterbacks that Keenan Allen's played with, and he had a little joke for that too. He's like, and now he's got Caleb.
Yeah.
So it's Phillip Rivers, Justin Herbert, and now he's throwing on his own Caleb Williams into that. And I think it's all fair. I think it's great. So many times in media, we have these like robot press conferences, and it's like pulling teeth to just get some personality and some obvious statements out. Guy's a top prospect. Let's treat him like that. He's your starting quarterback. Let's treat him like that. When he throws an interception, let's just talk about it. It's not a big deal. And I think this is awesome. I know people have had their fun with Matt Eberflus's press conferences so far, and we'll see how they go. Like I said, they start 0-2. What does it look like then? But I think this has been an actual improvement, and I believe it.
You believe what exactly? That he's changed Flus, or more open? That we're going to get a more open Flus going forward? I don't mean to pin you down to that one bit of comment. I'm with you, by the way. I agree.
Well, how about this? I believe he is more comfortable in front of the media, and
I wouldn't push back on that.
And I think that, sometimes we see these veteran coaches that have been in the league forever, and we're just like, well, this guy should know what to do at every press conference. He's never been a head coach before. He went many years in the NFL where he didn't have he barely had to talk to the media as an assistant. And then when he comes to DC and Indy, he's got to do a press conference once a week. But no offense to the Indy media, that's not Chicago. The room's way different here in Chicago. Now he gets thrown in this head coaching role. Like it's unfair to expect him to come in and be Matt Nagy right away, who did seem very comfortable in front of the microphone. And I just feel like this is somebody that's kind of growing into that role now here in his third year. And that's okay for him to take those couple years to need to get comfortable. Just like we've talked with Shane Waldron, if there's fair criticisms about him, how he was in front of the room in Seattle, well, now he's got a new job and he's got an opportunity to start over and learn from those experiences too. So he might be more comfortable in front of the room now compared to when he was in a different place.
And where I go is where this matters. He's, he's bringing over the rookies. They're hanging out. They're having food trucks. He's building rapport. The Bears are leaning into over and over again that their culture is the best culture, that in order to, Poles said on the Schefter pod that we'll get to, but I'm just jumping ahead here for a second. It's like, look, our locker room, like I remember, he's a big locker room guy. You hear this and you hear it from Flus too. So we are seeing like a little bit of evidence, I guess, that, or at least he's just giving examples of what he's been doing, bringing guys over, having food trucks, hanging out. That is more than just being football coach. And then we just saw him in front of us today, not just being football coach, but being a human, which to me, like the reason why this matters for those who will scream at us that doesn't matter. I just think it makes him more relatable. It makes him a better leader. It makes him, he's connecting with his guys. I think ultimately that does matter when you're trying to get the most out of guys.
Well, and two, I think he honestly, guys, he needs to be more genuine, comfortable in front of the microphone, because there's going to be a lot more microphones, cameras in maybe the next 2 weeks, 3 weeks, whenever Hard Knocks comes into this building too. So it's like, hey, you better show your authenticity right now, or however you want to be portrayed on this show, because it's coming into your building. It's going to be here for training camp. And, they're like DeAndre Swift was a guy that got misportrayed when he was on Hard Knocks when he was in Detroit. Like, you don't want to have that happen, but you just want to ultimately be yourself. So if Eberflus is going to have reps at this and show that he's getting better, this is the time to do it. And today was, I think, just a step in the right direction of how you can go about a press conference without being, super robotic about it.
We had a couple of good comments in there that I saw flash up on the screen. One was from AJ Katz. There was also one, this one right here. I think Flus has gotten more comfortable in general, and I also think Poles' notable transparency has made him feel like he can be a little bit less locked up with info. I think that's fair. When your boss is out there doing all these interviews and being very transparent, I think that probably helps you too. And then the super chat from Quinn, $5, from confusing everyone with the Claypool staying home being his choice to now being open, honest, and funny. Who says only players can grow and develop? Now, 2 points on this, Quinn. And I think it's a great super chat. One, I think it's a perfect example, because if I have to say the low of the Matt Eberflus press conferences was that one. And there was a lot of adversity going on at that time, and a lot of things weren't handled great. But that confusion post game with a situation where you didn't, I don't know, we criticized it immediately in the moment on that post-game show that day because it just was not handled well at all. And I remember being pretty critical, being like, if I'm a player in that locker room, I'm not thrilled with how this was handled. But coaches can learn from that. Like you can make mistakes like that and then learn from it. On the flip side, like I said off the top, very little problems right now. Hardly any adversity, really none whatsoever. So I think the real test will come whenever that adversity hits, and it will, whenever there's, Jason Leisure and Dan Weeder in the front row, coming at him, peppering him with fair questions, as always, and how it's all handled. Because right now, it's just a different vibe in June. I do think it's interesting, and that's why I wanted to bring it up.
We all silly like the mayor.